You were talking with Brett Baer, and I thought you had a very interesting answer because he was asking where you stood where it came to immigration and immigration reform and amnesty, which I think that there are two different things. I mean, there are real reforms needed, but then when you consider what the president has done, that's executive amnesty. And Brett Baer had asked if you had modified or flipped your vote, and you had said a flip would be someone who voted on something and then did something different. That was a very clever answer. I thought that was interesting. Explain a little bit, because I understand candidates also modify their stances, and I think if you have grassroots people who are unable to convince a candidate through political evangelism, then what is the point?
Right. When I first said this, actually back around CPAC time, I did an interview with Chris Wallace, name another person out there, but he said, "So have you changed?" I said, "Yeah," and I said, don't Americans want a leader who actually listens to people and after assessing something is willing to make a change if they think it's in the best interest, in this case, of the American people? And so I saw a combination of the failure of this president over the last 5-6 years when it comes to this subject, combined with the fact of spending a lot of time talking with border state governors, talking with lawmakers in both chambers, in the House and the Senate nationally, and just listening to people who are very concerned about this. Years ago when I was a county executive, even early on when I was a governor in Wisconsin, it really isn't much of a topic. Few people have asked me questions. I've said things, at least initial reactions, and some people have blown that out of proportion. But I said after really looking at things over the last year in particular, it's clear we got a broken system. We need to secure the border. We need to enforce the laws that we have. We need to make sure there is no amnesty. If you want to be a citizen, there's a legal way to do that, and go ahead and do that. But we shouldn't be granting amnesty. And then something we've talked about before that I think is fairly unique, at least I haven't heard any other would-be or current Republican candidate say this, and that is for legal immigration. And sometimes people, other outlets in the press get mistakenly confused about this. They think that we're talking about new restrictions. There are restrictions. They just don't make any sense in many regards. I'm saying if we have legal immigration going forward, our priority should be American working families and their wages and improving the American economy. I think those are pretty solid points.
Now, when you say enforce the border, because we hear that from a lot of different people, what does that entail when you say enforce the border? Because there are a lot of different ways that and I understand we're talking about securing it, not closing it.
Well, well, securing the border is really important for a couple of reasons. Early this year, I went with Governor Abbott, the governor of Texas, new governor, great governor of Texas, who took me along the border. We went up in the helicopter, we're down on the ground, we're in the command center with the Texas Public Safety, with local officials, as well as some of the federal officials, the federal authorities there. And more so than even being physically in the air, seeing the videos of what's happening, we have international criminal organizations penetrating our southern border. This isn't just, people think there's just a few people walking across to get to work. There are cartels pushing drugs, they're pushing firearms. The people they're pushing are overwhelmingly being trafficked. So this is a horrific problem. If this was happening at one of our water-based ports, we'd be sending in the Coast Guard and eventually the Navy to protect the sovereignty of the United States. This is a safety, a security, and a sovereignty issue out there. To me, the answer to it, the federal government's going to have to invest not just in infrastructure, but in technology and personnel. About a week and a half ago, I was in Israel. They have something like a 500-mile fence. When they put it up, over 90% reduction in terms of their terrorist bombing-related activities, things of that regard, that had been a threat on the state of Israel. It went down. It dramatically improved their quality of life. That's a small country compared to the United States. If they can secure the areas that they're talking about and keep that area safe, there's no reason why we can't do the same thing.